50 years ago, India tested a nuclear device. It became the sixth member of a nuclear club of 5 other countries which had tested nuclear devices. But it would be 24 years before India would test a weaponized form of that device. That's in Pokhran 2 in 1998. Cut to the present, a year from now, we will enter the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Nuclear weapons are back in the news as global buzzwords today as the world order fractures, wars and insecurity have taken over, and the great powers are once again sharpening their arsenals. Russia has just announced it will begin tactical nuclear weapons drills, or nuclear weapons that can be used on the battlefield as opposed to strategic weapons that hit cities and large military targets. The US too has been signaling deployments of its ballistic missile submarines. But coming back to India, what are the key turning points driving India's quest for nuclear weapons? And do we need to test newer nuclear weapons today? Do we need more nuclear tests? Joining me to discuss this is Lt General PR Shankar, former DG Artillery, and my colleague Deepak Bhadana in the studio here. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus Show.
Thanks a lot for inviting me over, and it's an honor to be on News9.
Thank you very much, General Shankar. Yes, I want to start straight away by giving you what we believe are the 7 important milestones in India's path to becoming a nuclear weapon state. And we start by the 1962 India-China war. General Shankar, explain to us the significance of that and how China presented itself as a strategic threat to India 60 years ago.
Look, before 62, one must flag the 1950 to 53 Korean War.
Right.
Korean War, was a very significant event because it was China was threatened by USA with nuclear weapons which were to be fired across the river Yalu. That's a border between North Korea and China. That left a deep impression on China, right? And ever since then, China started developing its own nuclear capability.
Yes.
Immediately following that happened the 62 war, and where we lost badly.
Yes.
And 62 war made China into some kind of a permanent adversary or stroke enemy with us.
Right.
And then we've always had this thing that, look, we had to confront China at one point of time or the other, by one means or the other.
Right.
And that's played on our psyche quite a bit. And that's 62.
General Shankar, so 1962, but the interesting part of that war, Deepak, is, as you will appreciate, that they were fought between 2 non-nuclear weapon states. At that time, neither China nor India had nuclear weapons. China had a very advanced nuclear weapons program, but India certainly had none. And cut to 1964, just 2 years after the border war, is when China tests nuclear weapons in Lopnor, and that took the world by surprise, and certainly India by shock. General Shankar, how did this shape our quest for nuclear weapons? Look, the Chinese nuclear test.
Yeah, a combination of 1962 and 1964 made us realize that our permanent adversary is not only going to be conventionally superior to us, but it has gone miles ahead with its nuclear capability.
Right.
And hence, I think there was a general consensus that we'll have to do something about it.
Right.
And you have to go back to the time 62 to 65. Between 62 and 65, our army was under reformation, our defense systems were under reformation.
Right.
A lot of effort went in, right, up to 65 ops, and in fact beyond that also. And that is when I think we started thinking nuclear.
Yes.
And when we said, okay, our nuclear, a civil nuclear program has to be now oriented towards defense.
Absolutely. And we chose the plutonium route. And then a few years later, General Shankar, we have 1967. We don't have an exact start date for the nuclear weapons program, but there are a number of accounts which suggest that it was during Mrs. Gandhi's tenure as Prime Minister that the first thoughts of a nuclear-armed India began to emerge. And General Shankar, there was a very interesting member of Mrs. Gandhi's advisory board Mr. P.N. Huxar, who's authored some of the most significant papers that call for India's role as a nuclear armed state. He actually makes those arguments why India needs to go nuclear. But tell us why 1967, the late 1960s, where was India strategically as a military power? We had just begun to recover from the 1962 war, 1965, and then you suddenly have the specter of a nuclear armed China on your borders.
Yeah, we always knew that, from 64 onwards, that China was a nuclear adversary.
Right.
And by 65, we had already 2 wars with, Pakistan, 48 and 65. And by 65, we were very clear that we were in a situation.
Right.
And very importantly, our national morale had turned over, especially after 65. And India was prepared to spend on its defense, programs, whatever, conventional and nuclear. And it'll be interesting to know that the period from 64 to, 63 after the war, about 66, 67, where some of the times when we've had the highest defense expenditure as a percentage of our GDP. We even crossed 3.5%.
Yes.
Right? This was at a time when we were a poor country.
Right.
And, we used to go without meals on Monday, if I remember right. Okay. At that time, it was very clear to us that we had to defend ourselves. And that's why probably when we went in for a nuclear weapons program, that was just a start.
Right.
It was going to be a long, hard road ahead.
Yes.
We knew that Pakistan will be our immediate problem.
Yes.
Because having been suffered a defeat in 65, they would come back at us sooner than later.
Right. Absolutely. And that's when the bomb program began. And Deepak, this is very interesting how the nascent Indian state in just about quarter of a century had already begun fighting so many wars. So you have 47, then you have 62, you have 65, and then finally you have 1971. But then just 3 years after that stunning victory of the 1971 war, General Shankar, we have the Pokhran 1 nuclear test, where India kind of announces its arrival, entry into the nuclear club. But of course, it's not a weapon. So explain to our viewers, what was the difference between the 1974 nuclear test and the 1998 nuclear tests?
Look, the 1974 nuclear test was a peaceful nuclear explosion.
Right.
What did it tell us? It told us that, or rather it told the world that we could enrich our uranium to weapon grade status. That's over 90% enrichment. We had the capability to do so. We had the capability to put together an atom bomb and use it. But it was not yet weaponized.
Right.
Right. What does 98 signify to you? 98 was a series of tests.
Yes.
Right? It also involved a 45 kT test and a sub kT test.
Right.
A set of about 5 tests.
Right.
That gave you refinement in weaponization.
Yes.
Right? You have the capability now in 98 to nuclear tip your weapon systems with different kinds of warheads.
Right.
Right? I'll not know which, but different kinds of warheads. But in between, there is this milestone, in the mid-80s.
Yes.
The milestone there was, in 74, we had established our nuclear tradition.
Right.
And then we said, now it's okay, fine, we have. How about weaponizing it?
Right.
Here comes ability to conversion from, a peaceful nuclear explosion, weaponization.
Right.
Around that time, we start the new... the
IGMDP.
IGMDP,
Absolutely.
yes.
But General Shankar, I want to go back one step to 1982, which was another factor that propelled our race towards becoming a nuclear weapons power, when we discovered to our shock and horror that Pakistan was close to getting a nuclear bomb, and from China. We know the date now because of a lot of research that's gone in. There have been revelations so far. But Deepak, this is again a very interesting point. That till then we had no idea. We knew that Pakistan was going to become a nuclear weapons state. That famous quote by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, where he said that Pakistan would eat grass but it would get a nuclear weapon, and to which Mr. Haksar mentioned that if that was the case, then horses and cows would have nuclear weapons as well. But the fact is that there was a very active Chinese hand in getting Pakistan the plutonium, the enriched plutonium, the nuclear weapon designs, blueprints, and that now we know through the benefit of research and revelations that it was around 1982 that the Pakistan Air Force C-130s took off from China with the complete bomb-grade uranium, the cores, the blueprints, and the know-how to make the bomb. But tell us, General Shankar, how New Delhi reacted to this, the revelation of the fact that Pakistan had the bomb before us, a weaponized version of the bomb. And why did China transfer this tech to Pakistan?
Yeah. Well, look, let me talk a little about the Pakistan effort. Pakistan, after that famous saying that we'll eat grass but we'll have an atom bomb, this was just after the 65 war.
Yes.
Right? Bhutto went about it pretty smartly, if I may say. He started off that AQCON network where they could get a lot of designs for nuclear enrichment and nuclear processing.
Yes.
Nuclear material processing from Europe.
Right.
It was smuggled to that. Plus, they got the bomb design from China. And then they got the missile designs and blueprints from Korea.
Right.
And they got the money from the Islamic world.
Right.
If you remember the scope of the Islamic bomb.
Yes.
Put all this together, and then came the news that they were weaponizing their whole system.
Right.
The moment that happens, India is on the alert. Right?
Yes.
You know now, okay, you can't sit back on your haunches of
right.
You need to weaponize yourself.
Right. So we come to the 1983 milestone, which is when India sets off the IGMDP, starts off on the IGMDP, the Integrated Guided Missile Development Project, for a series of strategic missiles being nuclear weapon enabled missiles, and that you have the Agni and then the Prithvi series, ballistic missiles. And General Shankar, you were part of both the Prithvi and the Agni missile programs. I don't know of many military men who've been on these missile programs. Tell us what the thinking was when we embarked on these projects in 1983. Was it always meant to be nuclear weapons carriers?
Look, when we embarked on the IGMDP in 82, 83, late 83, it came to form. And by 87, we had fired the first Prithvi missile.
Right.
And so the IGMDP had 5 missile systems.
Yes.
That is Prithvi, Agni, Trishul,
yes.
Akash, and Nag.
Right.
The focus was on Prithvi and Agni.
The strategic missile carriers, yeah.
Strategic missile.
Yeah.
Prithvi was just a surface-to-surface missile, 150
yes.
kilometers at that time. Simple ballistic missile with some guidance. But the Agni was a strategic missile which gave us, we went in for re-entry technology.
Right.
With over 600 kilometers of range. Mind you, at those days, 600 kilometers was quite huge.
Right.
And our thinking was pretty clear, I think. While we were thinking of a conventional warhead in the normal things, what we knew by then, what Pakistan had, and I think we went, at the back of the mind,
yes.
we were pretty clear that it should have a nuclear tip.
Absolutely.
Right? Especially for Agni.
Yes. Right? And then, so I want to fast forward, General Shankar. 15 years later, you have Pokhran 2, where India tests 5 nuclear devices over 2 days. Two are one is the boosted fission device, the other is the fission device, the other 3 are sub-kiloton weapons, which are battlefield tactical weapons, which are the subject of explainer you did recently, Deepak. 5 tests. We've hit 5 tests in 1998. 26 years later, General Shankar, I must ask you this. We've imposed a ban on more tests in 1998, the moratorium on further nuclear tests. Our scientists say that we have enough reason, we have enough data for different devices. Do you believe India needs to test again? Given the fact it's 25 years since we tested last, would there be a time when we would need to test a new series of warheads?
Okay. Look, 25 years back, we did those tests with the technology which was available there.
Right.
From a technological viewpoint, things have changed, right? And you can get better warheads which are more efficient, with better technologies.
Right.
From that point of view, you need to test.
Right.
But that does not alone constitute testing for nuclear weapons or nuclear tests. Or for that matter, miniature tests, right? What does, make force us to rethink is the fact that the world is nuclearizing in a different manner. You spoke of Russia going in for tactical nuclear warheads.
Yes.
But the fact is that Pakistan has put a tactical nuclear warhead on its Nasser missile long back, 3 years back. And that's just got about 60, 70 kilometers of range, whatever it is.
Right.
Okay. And next is China has, is enlarging and expanding its missile capacity, rather, its nuclear capacity. It's under a tremendous nuclear expansion.
Right.
It started off a couple of years back with 350. Today it is said that it has about 500 nuclear warheads.
Right.
And by 2030, it has a plan to go to 1,000 nuclear warheads.
Absolutely.
Right. So does this places us at a disadvantage? We'll have to think over it.
Right.
The third factor is that, you just designed and, demonstrated MIRV capability.
Yes.
Indigenous.
Right.
Right. And they're going to be small warheads, or rather, logically. So with all these three things put together, forces us to rethink our whole story of test ban.
Yes.
It's the time has come for us to go tactical,
right,
or not, is something which we have to debate. Is it the time to expand our nuclear capacity? Is also a point of debate. But you can do either only if you have better technology.
Right.
So from that point of view, I think it is imperative that we start thinking of doing tests. Okay. And probably if you have a very good stable government and things are this thing, we should go. There's another factor which I'd like to bring in.
Yes.
We are looking at the nuclear triangle here between India, Pakistan and China.
Absolutely.
This is one.
Yeah, it's the only nuclear triangle in the world, General Shankar, where one country is faced, one nuclear armed state is faced with two nuclear armed states, and they all three share a common boundary and contested boundaries.
Yeah, but there is another place which is coming up. There's another major nuclear, flashpoint coming up.
There's North Korea, Russia, and China, but they are more or less in a.
If I may put in.
Yes.
It is at present North Korea, China, and of course Russia have nuclear weapons.
And they're fairly close to each other. They're aligned in a.
There is a debate on.
Yes.
In Japan and South Korea.
Right.
To nuclearize.
Right.
And there is also US presence out there.
Yes.
Okay. So actually, what is coming out is the Far East is becoming a nuclear hexagon, that flashpoint.
Right. Oh, interesting.
Right?
Right.
It's going to be, in the next 3 to 4 years, you might well see this happening.
A nuclear hexagon in the Far East. The ring of fire is something that they used to call the Far East because of the volcanic activity. But as General Shankar mentioned, that could be, well, a string of nuclear weapon states, prospective potential nuclear weapon states. But Deepak, you've researched on tactical nuclear weapons and you've done a great explainer for us. You have a question for General Shankar on this.
So, General Shankar, I wanted to understand, we have some idea about Russia's tactical nuke capability. We know that Pakistan has had them, and every juncture they've repeated, threatened to use it against India. How do you see the other nuclear states and their approach to tactical nukes?
Look, if you look at it from a historical point of view, USA always had tactical nuclear weapons. So did Britain.
Right.
So did France. Right? They've always had it from the Cold War days. Now we are looking at tactical nuclear weapons in our context. Uh, Definitely Pakistan has. China would have. They will never tell you. And but we don't have that. I know for pretty sure. So
Right.
is there a case for us to go nuclear tactically? Is a point which we have to debate.
Right.
In the Far East, I don't see Japan, South Korea heading into
Yes.
a tactical nuclear play. But I see the nuclear proliferation and the missile proliferation in West Asia
Right.
is a problem.
Right.
With the kind of missile technology which the Houthis and the Hezbollah and Hamas
Yes.
have acquired, and Iran one screwdriver away from being a nuclear weapons state, the transfer of technology of this critical nature to the non-state actors is also a screwdriver away.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much, General Shankar. We are completely out of time here, but thanks as always for your clarity on nuclear weapons. I always remember the fact that you're someone who's designing some very cutting-edge technology for the armed forces, and but that's a subject for another discussion another day. But the fact that China and Pakistan forced India's nuclear tests is known, and thank you for taking us down that path from 1962 to present day. And the fact that you mentioned that India would need to test nuclear weapons at some point and would need to field tactical nuclear weapons, which a lot of other countries in the world are discussing and debating. But thank you very much again, General Shankar, for joining us, and Deepak, on this very burning topic, if I may say, on nuclear weapons and India's national security. Does India need to conduct fresh nuclear tests? Well, we asked that question to Dr. R. Chidambaram. He's one of only 3 Indian scientists to have played a key role in India's nuclear weapons program, the other 2 being Dr. Homi Baba and Dr. Raja Ramanna. Now watch our special show, First Person, featuring Dr. R. Chidambaram, only on the News9 Plus app. Download and watch.
I'm R. Chidambaram, and of course I retired as chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission. Then I was the principal scientific advisor to the government of India. Now I'm back in BRC as honorary professor.